Hello everyone. I can't believe it's already been a week, and it's only been a week. Just kidding. Welcome to 2025, new year, and a new video. I've just been taking some time for myself, just kind of evaluating where I'm at, where I want to be, and this is the perfect time of year for that. And so I'm happy to be back. I'm glad. I'm going to try to be making a video once a month. I'm not going to commit to doing a weekly video because starting in the spring, I'm going to school. I decided after a 10-year break that I wanted to go back to school for ASL English interpreting, and I'm really excited about it. And so I'm not going to commit to making weekly videos, but I want to at least be here once a month with you guys. And on that note, I ended up teaching a class over the fall. On my time off, I put it all into an ebook. And so if you were interested in it, you can check it out on my website. It's called What is Astrology or Foundations of Astrology. And I'll have a class coming up in the spring that I'll be teaching about perfections and how to use them and what they are because a lot of people have never been introduced to those. So keep an eye out. I'll have more info on that later. And in the meantime, I'm still accepting clients. I'm still doing astrology sessions one on one, unless I'm doing a compatibility session, and then it's one on two. Those are very fun. But yeah, I offer compatibility, astral guidance, which is where we just use divination to answer a question. Astro development, which is like mentorship. If there was something that you wanted to learn in astrology, if you just wanted someone to ask questions to, or if you wanted something more involved on a more regular basis, I do that too. I also offer something called star therapy, which is 3 sessions. And so instead of just meeting once, we would meet 3 times. And that is more so like a personal development. And so some people find setting goals and then meeting regularly to meet those goals and reflect on that to be really helpful and enlightening. And so if that's something you're interested in, all that info is on my website. And yeah, I'm ready to get into the astrology of this month. I want to send a special thank you to the people at Honeycomb Almanac for providing a nice little product, a nice tool to use, and that is where I'm going to be pulling some of the graphics that I'm using from, is the 2025 planner. So for January of 2025, in general, we have some major themes that I see. The first is going to be a change in commitments. The second is going to be a time to get clear on intentions. And so, right along with changing your commitments, whether that's a personal commitment or a commitment with someone else, just getting really clear on why you're doing that, what you are trying to get out of that, what you have to offer it. Yeah, just doing things intentionally instead of just changing commitments because you need a change of pace, because it is also a good time for a change of pace. The third thing is going to be building new rituals that kind of adds on to the last two things. Maybe you want to change, your relationship with your body, maybe incorporate some kind of movement like stretching or exercise. And so you create a new ritual to do that, a plan to move regularly. It could also be with other things, but it does feel very personal. It feels very kind of like a solitary kind of time. This is the darkest time of the year, and with the fourth kind of major theme, use the darkness to get some rest. We're in Capricorn season and we're in Aquarius season, and those two signs are ruled by the planet Saturn. And the reason that Saturn is associated with darkness is because this is literally the darkest time of the year. And so you want to use that. You want to keep that in mind. Things might not be super clear, things might not be very visible, but that doesn't mean that anything is wrong. It just means like it's a reflection of like literally there's less light in the world made available by the sun and the seasons. So use it to get some rest. If you've been oversleeping like I have, then just let it happen. Don't beat yourself up about it. Next, we're going to talk about some transits this month. First, we're going to have Venus in Pisces. That's going to start January 3rd and is going to last until February 3rd. And you can expect luxury, comfort, hedonism. Venus is exalted in the sign of Pisces. And so that's about being comfortable and having your needs met. I just read about Venus recently in Post-Colonial Astrology, which is like probably my favorite book of all time. It's a really, really good read. If you're interested in it, I would highly recommend you get it for yourself. But it was talking about how in an ancient view of Venus, she was always associated with war and with battle, and that was part of her association with comfort and luxury, especially in the Greco-Roman eras, was we have a military complex that is built around conquering other people and extracting their resources. And then because we do that, we have more resources and we have comfort and we have luxury. And so there was this idea of luxury and comfort and abundance coming from an exploitation of other people. And so on one hand, this is a time to kind of indulge a little bit, to get a little extra coffee, to just do a little treat for yourself. And at the same time, make sure you're not going above your means to get that little treat. Make sure you're not spending all of your spouse's money to get something that you guys really can't afford right now, especially if you're recovering from the holiday season where you might have already kind of spent a little bit more than you should have. And so just finding that balance between being comfort, feeling like making yourself feel special, and not doing that at anyone else's expense, because those can come hand in hand sometimes. Next, we have Mars retrograding in Cancer. That's going to be January 7th through February 24th. So Mars has already been retrograding. January 7th is when it enters the sign of Cancer. The notes I have are personal vulnerability, such as shame and overwhelming passion. Mars in Cancer, and especially Mars retrograding, is a place where Mars can do the most damage. It is the place where it hurts the most. And for me, at least, someone with Mars in Cancer natally, it's going to be, I think I have it at 22 or 23 degrees. So I'm going to have a Mars return during this time. And there's a big, I think one of my most vulnerable feelings that I'm learning to kind of sit with is shame. And so when I talk about vulnerability, sometimes it's not just vulnerability in general. It's like what makes you personally and specifically feel vulnerable. For me, it's shame, feeling, comparing to other people and not allowing myself the grace that I would allow other people. And so this whole period, this month and next month, is going to be a time where you're giving yourself grace and you're giving yourself understanding, you're giving yourself patience, and you're doing that for other people too. You don't want to, it's a very quick spiral from, I feel a little bit embarrassed to everyone is out to get me and I don't deserve to be around other people and just to spiral. It can go very, very quickly. And so we want to make sure we've got our beast on a leash, so to speak, and that we're noticing the vulnerability, but we're not overreacting to it because there's a sense of passion that can come out of it. There's a sense of passion to do better and to be better and to see yourself differently and even to see other people differently. So hold yourself accountable for your own feelings. You might have a lot of feelings lately. Cancer is ruled by the moon, and the moon's an emotional planet. So be great, be graceful with yourself and with others. Next, we're going to talk about Mercury in Sagittarius moving into Capricorn. So it's been in Sagittarius since November 3rd, and then on November 9th, it is going to enter Capricorn. Exploring and dreaming of lasting foundations and intellectualizing versus quantifying. And so I feel like Mercury is a very intellectual planet. It's at least it's seen that way, but it's really an emotional planet too. It's the planet of communication, and communication and language itself it hits you with your emotions, like a poet is a really good poet, would be considered very mercurial, and they would also be considered someone who can move you with their words and who can make you feel things and invoke feelings in you. And so Mercury is not just this intellectual planet. It's also a planet that understands emotions. I think about like animals and how they can be you can have different animals said to be, have an affinity with certain planets. And the planets that would have an affinity, or the animals that would have an affinity with Mercury, would be anything that you can domesticate and communicate with. And when I read that, I was so fascinated because Mercury is the planet of communication. So, of course, if you can, whether it's a squirrel or something you don't typically domesticate or have as a pet, if that specific one, whether it's an exception or it's normal for it, can build a relationship with you and communicate with you, it is mercurial. And so, yeah, try not to box Mercury into anything because it is always the exception to what we think. It's always finds a way to cross that boundary into being something else right when we think it's one thing. And so I wrote intellectualizing versus quantifying because I think quantifying can have an emotional weight to it as well. We can kind of quantify how much of something there is or how much weight our words have or our actions have in a relationship or in a transaction, so to speak. And yeah, with Sagittarius and it being kind of a period of exploration of those things, and then Capricorn being more making it real and making it last and saying, this is what we hope for, what do we have now? And how can we combine those things to have a foundation that will last and that feels equal? It feels quantified, not intellectualized, where maybe we have agreements that we agreed on, but then something happens and then we feel a different way, but quantifying where it's, I feel like this is fair. And that's going to be Mercury in Sagittarius and Capricorn. The next one is huge. The next thing is a big one, and that is the North Node leaving the sign of Aries, moving into the sign of Pisces, and the South Node leaving the sign of Virgo and entering the sign of Virgo and leaving the sign of Libra. That happens January 11th. And it's going to last until July 26th of the next year. So this is not like a one and done, okay, we move signs. This is going to be a long period. And so when we're thinking about that starting out, it makes sense to think about what the last period was and to think about how that's changing and shifting into this new part of the cycle. And this last period was about establishing a sense of self and other and removing from that and into a period of, well, what do we do with who we are? I know who I am now, I know who you are now, but like, what do I do with you? And what do I do with myself? And what do you do with me? And these are the kind of questions that are popping up. And I know Virgo and Pisces are often seen as like the axis of service. And I think that is a helpful thing. But I think on an even broader sense than just service, it's just what do we do with each other? You did something, it made me feel some kind of way. How do I react to that? And it's going to come up in different ways because it is such a long transit. But yeah, it's going to be a time of thinking about how we react to other people and how we perceive them and how we perceive ourselves. Next, we have the Sun in Capricorn and Aquarius. And so the Sun entered Capricorn December 22nd and it leaves it and enters Aquarius on January 20th. And it's going to stay in there till February 17th. And so like I said, when the sun is in Capricorn and Aquarius, that is the darkest time of year. And so, even though these are two different signs, they both have a similar message. They're both ruled by Saturn, and it's about facing darkness. I was playing a game recently, and I heard a quote that I thought was interesting. And it was something about how light doesn't dispel darkness, it just makes it easier to see so that you can face it. And so I think there's this idea, especially in a lot of like new age spirituality, that light is like the cure for like an illness and that darkness is like an illness when it's not like that. They're both part of a natural cycle and they don't like cancel each other out. They just make each other more obvious. And so, the more darkness you have in your life, the more tempting I think it is to find some sort of hope. And I think if you can get too far into the practice of hope and too far into feeling pure rather than working with what you have, you can enter an extreme of trying to dispel darkness rather than face it, because it's part of the world and it's part of us. And so we don't want to be too harsh with ourselves. And that'll be the sun. Next, we're going to talk about one of the four asteroid goddesses, Vesta. And it is entering the sign of Scorpio on January 4th. And it's going to be in there till September 15th because in March it's going to retrograde. And so it'll enter Scorpio, get pretty far in, and then it'll go back into the early degrees of Scorpio and then go back through it again and be there until September. And the notes I had is just deep commitment. This commitment could be a personal commitment, it could be interpersonal one with someone else, but Vesta is about rituals and about the things that make our hearts beat. I don't know how else to say it, and that's a phrase that I always come back to with Vesta is it's the reasons, it's the reason we want to wake up in the morning. It's the things we look forward to. It's that little light that we keep lit and that we want to nurture very gently and very consistently, and that little heartbeat or that little fire in us. And this is going to be a period of deep commitment. It could be, I'm thinking it's probably going to lean on like the personal kind of secretive kind of side, maybe not even secretive, but maybe just a little bit hidden or less obvious, because Scorpio is kind of a less obvious, kind of a hidden kind of thing. I mean, it has its big moments, but for the most part, they tend to be a little bit more passive. It is the passive sign of Mars, and so it is a little bit quieter than Aries compared to Aries. So, yeah, and maybe there's some element of like a battle to it or some kind of like struggle with it because Mars is the planet of struggle and the planet of battle. And so you'll want to be thinking about what are your commitments? What are they for? And are they helpful? Or is it kind of like a battle where you just need to like kind of let it go and live a little bit? Not too much, but a little bit. And that'll be Vesta. Next, we have Jupiter retrograding in Gemini. So this has been going on. It was retrograding back in October last year and will continue to retrograde until February next month. I wrote moving cautiously because this is a time to move cautiously. It's such a big planet and such a little world, and you want to think about if your voice, if what you said was like three times as loud, or your body was three times as big and you just took up that much more space, would you go to the same places? Would you move the same way? Would you say the same things? And that's kind of the situation that we're in with Jupiter and Gemini, and especially while it's retrograding, is just like walking backwards through a maze that's already too small for you in the first place. So move cautiously. It doesn't mean anything bad is going to happen, it just means be cautious. Next, we have Uranus, and it is retrograding in Taurus. And it will finally station direct at the end of this month. So it's been retrograding since September 2nd last year, and it will go direct on either February 1st or January 31st. Honestly, I'm not sure because the way I wrote my notes, but either way, Mercury, or not Mercury, Uranus is going direct. This is going to be some kind of change in shape, and in order to grow, you have to change. And so the softer you can be with yourself, the more gentle and kind, the easier change will be. If you think about like a mountain or just really hard stone, it can be changed. And the harder it is, the either the rougher you have to be with it to get it to change, or the longer you have to take, like water slowly eroding down parts of a mountain. So if you are the one experiencing change, try to be soft. Be soft with yourself, be soft with others, and then that will make it easier to become something else. And you don't entirely become something else because you're still you, but it makes you a softer you. And that's pretty rarely a bad thing, I think, especially these days. That's going to be all of our transits for this month. or at least the major ones. Next, we have the aspects. Aspects are a relationship between two different planets. So that's what we're going to look at, is how are the planets talking to each other this month. On January 6th, we're going to have Mercury in Sagittarius making a square to Neptune in Pisces. Dream big, but make sure to include some practical how-to in your dreams. You want to avoid some instructions unclear kind of thing, especially because Mercury will be entering Capricorn on the 9th, just a few days later. And so if your instructions are not clear, then your Barbie's dream house might be a little wonky. You might have a little rooms in the wrong place or walls in the wrong place, doors instead of windows. So make sure you're clear. Just think I've been writing a lot recently so that if I have big emotions or something really big I want to talk about, writing it out kind of helps filter through the reactivity and into the sense making part of my brain. That's helped me accomplish a lot. Next, we have the Sun in Capricorn opposing Mars retrograding in Cancer. So, again, feeling vulnerable and an increased need for self care. Don't be afraid to ask others for care. I think it can feel so embarrassing and you can feel so ashamed to be like, hey, I want a hug, or I really don't want to cook. Can we order a pizza tonight? Things like that. It's maybe you need that. Just ask for what you need. Don't be embarrassed about it. That embarrassment is kind of like the enemy right now. So fight the enemy and yeah, take care of yourself. And don't be afraid to ask others to help with that. Next, we have Mercury, sextile Venus and Saturn, January 19th. So, this is about long term desires reconciling with short term plans. So, maybe there's something you really want and you're not ready for it, and you're not really sure how to get there, but you know that you want it and you want to make it work. And so, you're figuring out the short term of, okay, I can't take this huge step yet. I don't have that ability to right now. How can I take a baby step and then another baby step so that I can feel like I'm moving towards these plans in a way that reconciles with where I'm actually at right now? Because again, it's that dark time of year. We don't have a lot of light, so maybe it's not a good idea to go sprinting full speed into the darkness. Maybe we should take a few baby steps, make sure the ground is steady, and go from there. Next, we have the Sun and Pluto conjunct on January 21st. So, this is about secrets being uncovered, the underbelly of the truth. And so, with Pluto being such a generational and a slow planet, I'm wondering if maybe this is going to be like a bigger, less interpersonal thing where, like, maybe there's some kind of revelation where people find out about something, or maybe this is just going to be a more personal thing. Either way, we'll be okay. I mean, I'm not really worried about it. I think it'll just be a day. It's just two very powerful planets. And so I think maybe take it easy if you can on that day, and then we'll be all right. Next, we have, well, that's all for the aspects. And so next, we're going to talk about the full moon and then the new moon. And then I think that's all I'll have for you. So, the full moon in Cancer happens on January 13th. The first thing I want to talk about is the moon conjunct Mars. Try to avoid conflict today by making sure you're well rested with a compassionate perspective. I can't stress this enough. Mars moon conjunctions, I think I've said it on here before, that equals arguments and conflict. So be nice. Be nicey with yourself, because if you're beating yourself up and anyone approaches you, that's gonna externalize. You're gonna start beating them up too. So be nice to yourself, and then you'll be nice to other people. And don't be afraid to ask people to be more gentle with you or to be softer with you. It almost catches people off guard, but it lets them know where you're at, and it can very quickly diffuse a situation before it escalates. So, please be gentle with me. Hey, can you be a little bit softer with me? Takes accountability for your own vulnerability and helps you get what you need. So next we're gonna have Moon sextile Uranus retrograding in Taurus. Some unexpected developments may appear once you've developed greater patience for your circumstances. So this feels very much like one of those, I want something so bad, I'm gonna try to get it. This is what happened with my cat, actually. I wanted a cat so bad, I was looking for one. It was kitten season, so I was like, the shelters have to have them. Like, none in the shelter, no stray patients to take home. Like, I worked at a cat hospital at the time, so I didn't get a cat. And I was like, we're gonna get a Chihuahua. And so we signed up and we had to wait because she had to get fixed and she had to get one of her legs amputated. And so we were on a waiting period. We had already agreed to get her. Our search for our cat had stopped. And then in comes a little patient at work that he was a stray cat and he tested positive for FIV. So he could no longer be an outdoor cat and he didn't have an owner, and so I took him home with me because the alternative would have been to euthanize him, and he's been mine ever since. And it was one of those things where I already had a name picked out for him, but I wasn't looking for a cat. I had stopped looking, I didn't have a litter box, I wasn't ready for it physically, but mentally I was very clear in what I wanted, and so it feels like one of those things where you're gonna want it, you're gonna look for it, and then doesn't come up. And then the moment you put your guard down, you stop searching for it and you start becoming more grateful for what you have or making changes to what you have to be more happy with it, it appears. So this is that kind of full moon. So it's a nice thing. It's a nice thing to see. I'll just say that. Next we have the Sun trine Uranus retrograding in Taurus. Oh, seek unconventional routes to achieve your goals. Success may come where you least expect it. So again, maybe the unconventional route is to stop pursuing it. And then when you stop pursuing it, hey, yeah, you get a call that suddenly there's a position available and they need some help. Yeah, don't worry about going on the path that's already trotted. If you need to make a new path to where you're trying to go, do it. Just do it safely and, don't take a big risk for it. Just do it safely. Next, we're going to have the Sun sextile Neptune in Pisces conjunct the North Node. Sometimes escape is what you need in the moment, and other times it can be a form of avoidance for things that are better off confronted. And so we're going to look at escapism, we're going to look at where we're at, and sometimes escapism is a healthy and a positive form of distress tolerance. It's a way to make yourself more comfortable in an uncomfortable position. Maybe if you don't have control over a situation, then that's what you need to do is you need to escape a little bit. And it can be a way to avoid things. And so I think that kind of determining factor between whether you're avoiding something and kind of just trying to seek comfort where you don't have it is whether you can actually control the situation or not. If you're really nervous about a phone call that you need to make and you just are really dreading it and you are, you're playing a little video game all day because you don't want to make the phone call, that's probably avoidance because you can control picking up the phone and dialing the number. You can do that. But if you're nervous because you submitted an application for something and it's really important and you just have to wait until it's approved or not, well, there's not much else you can do. And so maybe playing a little game is a good idea for you. It's something you can do that will kind of help you relax. And making that phone call is something you can do to help you relax too. Don't underestimate the power of an accomplished task to relieve you of any stress. It's groundbreaking at times. That's it for the full moon in Cancer. Next, we're going to talk about the new moon in Aquarius happening on January 29th. So, on the new moon, we're going to have Mercury conjunct Pluto. It's possible we might hear big news. What did I say about the sun being. And hold on a second. I said something about the sun and Pluto. Okay, that's conjunct on the 21st. So that's a week before this new moon in Aquarius. So I wrote it's possible we might hear big news, maybe a development and something that we saw a week before. I don't know, but I'm interested. And so we also are going to have the sun and moon trine Jupiter retrograding in Gemini. And this is innovative or encouraging communication based in truth. And so this is when you can be honest and objective and fair about the circumstances you're in and use that as encouragement for being more creative in the way that you communicate because it just feels good. It just feels like going up, not uphill, because that means more difficult, but moving up, progressing, moving forward. It feels like the Sun trine Jupiter alone is a very auspicious and good thing to have and to see. And so with the moon being there too, it's like we got this. It's a good way to end off the month. I did write what kind of messages would be life changing and who would you need to hear them from. So that could be from a government office, it could be from a significant other, it could be from a stranger. My husband the other day said that someone stopped him at the store and was like, "You're probably the most beautiful person in here. I hope you have a great day." And he was like, "Thank you." So maybe you need to hear something like that from a stranger. But what kind of things would be life changing? And who would you need to hear them from? That could be a healthy little escape. We were talking about escapes, and sometimes escaping into a fantasy is the first step into making it a reality. And with that, that's all I have. I can hear my little sunshine, my chihuahua I mentioned earlier. She's barking for me. So thank you guys. Stay safe, and I'll see you next time.